In 1990, the idea of an automated car that drove you by itself was the thing of science fiction, specifically Total Recall, the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger where he drove around in a Johnny cab. But in some places around the United States, this is becoming a reality. So we're going to explore that today on the Data Radio Show. Hello there, welcome to this week's episode of the Data Radio Show, where we're exploring autonomous driving. There's a lot of press out there about different models of autonomous vehicles and what they're going through in their testing phase. But in parts of LA, San Francisco and Arizona, there are already models being put out by an organization called Waymo. And Sam Williams recently went for a bit of a drive in one and then did a bit of research on it that he put into the most recent Data Pro newsletter, which you can subscribe to. It's down in the description and the comments below. So how was the experience as somebody who's driven all their lives? What's it like handing your trust over to an autonomous vehicle? Well, we're going to explore that and more in this week's interview. But before we get to that, don't forget to hit that like, share and subscribe button. Let people know what you're watching and let us know in the comments section whether or not you've ever been in one of these autonomous vehicles or what your experiences have been with them so far, or even how much something like science fiction and the news has shaped your views on them. All right, let's jump over and check out that interview now. Hello there, welcome to the latest episode of the Data Radio Show. Joining me this week, I've got Sam Williams, fresh off the plane from Los Angeles, back into another summer in the Southern Hemisphere, I guess. First of all, how are you holding up, Sam? How was your trip?
It was illuminating, I suppose, is how I would describe it. So holding up well, considering I only got 6 hours sleep last night.
Was it 6 hours across timelines or 6 hours all in one go?
Yes, exactly.
So on your trip to LA, you came across something that for many years has been a staple of science fiction, but obviously becoming a bit more of a reality, the kind of thing that Elon Musk talks about a little bit, that we've seen politicians try and promote the use of autonomous vehicles. And there's always been a bit of hesitation in the media to them because I think giving up a little bit of responsibility and trust into a machine freaks people out. But I'm really curious to know about your perspective on this, how you came across it and what your experience was like.
Yeah, I guess that's something that defines certain cities and areas in the States now. Tourists or visitors to San Francisco would see self-driving vehicles all over the place, and that's become commonplace there. I happen to be in Los Angeles County and encountered Waymo. So these driverless vehicles, pass you by as you're walking down the street. Equally, I was driving into the Hollywood Hills, and a Waymo pulled out in front of me, behaving like a very polite driver. And there was no discernible difference between a driverless car in terms of its behavior on the roads there as another driver observing another driver or that EV. So I guess I was curious. It's like these things seem to be commonplace here in LA. Why don't I give it a go? Interestingly enough, when I applied, and it's just like signing up for Uber, you have to join a wait list. So I thought, oh, well, probably this trip I'm not going to get the chance to try it out. Being a bit of a tech nerd, obviously it would be a fun and interesting thing to do. Something to put a tick off your bucket list. Strangely, I was... a friend of mine was using the car this particular day, and I needed to get from A to B, and I thought, well, I'll just use a Lime scooter. Well, the Lime scooter had a broken front wheel, and there wasn't another one for ages. As happenstance would have it. At just the same moment that I discovered that the Lime scooter didn't have a front wheel, I got a notification from Waymo saying you're off the wait list. So I thought, bugger it, I'm going to give this a go. Yeah. And that's exactly what I did. So, I mean, that's perhaps not the most interesting story as to why I happened to but it was just happenstance and coincidence that I came off the wait list at just the moment that I needed to get from A to B. I summoned it just like you would an Uber. It pulled up. One of the things that you can do with it is you can put your initials on the display that appears on the top, so you know that this particular Waymo is for you. When it pulls up, you actually have to unlock it from your app, so they're making sure that you're the right person to get in. You get inside, and it gives you a whole series of instructions and in terms of what you need to do, and it plays some rather calming ambient music, which, watching other people that have used it, they comment on this as well. And I think that there is typically a high degree of nervousness from passengers, getting in these things. And so some thought has gone into how do we make the ride experience sedating, shall we say. So it pulled out, and you'll see from the footage that I took, it drove smoothly, courteously, easily, and I mean, quite literally, it blew my mind. It was the stuff of science fiction, that both you and I have grown up with, that was here right now, right in front of me, right in place there.
I'm kind of curious about getting into the backseat of something like this without a driver. From a psychological point of view, that must be something that's kind of unsettling. We expect, a 2-ton death machine to have somebody behind the wheel, because how else is it going to be controlled? Was that an apprehension that you had going into it, going, I have to relinquish control to a machine, and I have to hope that this machine is incorporating all of these data points that are coming in from everywhere? Must be hundreds of thousands of them at any one point, and able to process them all so I can have a safe drive from A to B.
Well, I must be strange compared to most people, because not an instant of fear, or it was just pure novelty to me. I did not find it a scary experience. It was an absolutely exciting experience to me. The nearest thing that I can equate it to, which is not really comparable, but it's going on a roller coaster. You give up all control sitting on a roller coaster. And I just have to add that it was nothing like the experience of being on a roller coaster. I did not feel queasy. I did not feel terrified. But yeah, it was just the most fascinating experience to me. And I guess that it's the nerd in me that was just, I was curious more than anything else, and amazed at how, when I started to think about some of the things that it needed to do, and how is this possible? And I mean, if you look into the history of Waymo, it started with Google, and it's more than a decade old that they've been experimenting with and figuring out how to make AVs work. And there's been a lot of hype, and there's been a lot of disappointment, and there are lots of debate about how feasible, is this real? I can say from my experience, it was a very real thing that was smooth, seamless, easy. There are certain little quirks to it, like, how does it know where to pull up
Hmm.
And if you need it to kind of drop you off at a certain location, you can't actually tell it to just go around the block, for instance,
Mm.
like you would with your Uber driver, or pull into this driveway. So it was just overall a fascinating experience, and it left me awestruck.
The amount of data that would be needed for the operating systems to do what it does must include, just off the top of my head, spatial awareness of what's going on around it, looking at other traffic, other pedestrians, other sort of issues that crop up. Um, I'm guessing weather must be something that also comes into play,
Yeah.
like actual
What
physical elements like that.
uh,
Um,
Actually, one of the reasons why they started out in Arizona in terms of operating the system there is because it had predictable weather patterns. It was always dry. So they've taken an incremental approach. You go from Arizona, which is a hot, dry climate, and then you go to San Francisco, which was the next place, which is fog, rain, plenty of different weather patterns. But those are things that they've actually had to kind of contend with.
as a driver, did it make you more aware the next time you got into a vehicle that you were in control of just how much there is going on around you?
Yeah, well, it got me thinking about how we use most of our senses as a driver. So, those that would be familiar with the debate from Tesla and Elon Musk, and there's a whole controversy where Elon has been promising self-driving capability for pretty much a decade as well. And every year it's going to be next year that will be fully
Mhm.
autonomous. And there's a lot of, uh, he's taken a very purist point of view in terms of the sensing mechanisms that he uses. So Teslas and Autopilot are only using sight, so visual recognition, in order to be able to
Mhm.
um, have their autopilot work, or their self-driving mode. Um, and as I was sitting there and I was thinking, well, there's a lot more to this than just being able to see things. If I think about my own experience as a driver, I'm sensing vibration,
Mhm.
and it's not just, um, through your hands, it's through the seat of your pants.
Mm.
That you're feeling what's going on in terms of acceleration. It's what you see, obviously. Sometimes it's what you hear. So to hear a siren, for an approaching, fire truck, for instance, or some other crash or noise is another sense that you rely on. A less kind of readily thought about one is what you smell.
Mm.
Sometimes what you smell in a vehicle tells you what's going on. So I guess my way of looking at it is that it's literally a whole concert, or symphony of different senses that we use as humans. It's what we see, it's what we sense, it's what we anticipate, through vibration, sound, etc. That is pretty important to the driving process. And when I started to look into it, in terms of how Waymo have built it, there's radar, there's
Mhm.
ultrasound, there's LiDAR, and then there are a whole series of cameras. In addition, there are cameras on the inside looking at you, and how you're behaving in the vehicle. So there are stories of people that have disconnected their seatbelts, for instance, mid-drive. What happens when a passenger has a heart attack in the back
Mm.
seat? How do you pick up on that? Which is a safety concern that a driver is going to pick up on. How do you handle people that are likely to vomit? Because they've drunk too much on a night out. These are all kind of elements to the passenger experience that you need to take into account.
In terms of the hardware itself on the vehicle, obviously there's a bit of a rig I've noticed on the top of the vehicle when it pulls in. Was there anything really noticeable inside that you were like, okay, well, this is clearly for the purpose of its self-driving, space used for hardware, for example, or cameras or anything like that? Or was it actually
Uh,
relatively well hidden?
yeah, it's relatively well hidden. I think Waymo's approach is to take a Jaguar EV and turn it into an AV. So it is a standard production vehicle that they have heavily modified. The only real way that you know that it's different is by looking at the outside. And of course, on top, there's a LiDAR sensor, and then there are various cameras around. What I noticed from some of the material that I was reviewing is there's actually a substantial computer in the trunk of the car. So if you were to actually lift up where the spare wheel would be, there's actually a whole array of computing equipment and sensors in there. As for the actual passenger experience, again, it was a very smooth ride. Like I really, you kind of expect it to be a bit clumsy in some way, shape, or form. And as someone that's actually used autopilot on a Tesla, I found that experience, like my passengers got car sick using autopilot. And the way I would describe it is that it felt to me like it was a a recently licensed teenage driver that didn't know how to accelerate properly, pay attention to the distance that there was between it and the next vehicle. And so it was a lurchy experience. And that sort of whole repeated pattern of lurching, pulling back, made my passenger car sick. No such sensation with Waymo. Like there was no discernible or noticeable way in which it was different to a regular human driver. And I think to Waymo's credit, they've spent a decade figuring this out, and they are using a whole array of sensors and just a sea of data to be able to figure this all out.
Do you have any idea how much data it's actually producing? I know you did some research afterwards, so I was kind of curious if that came up, because that must be teraquads of data that it's dealing with.
Yeah, the short answer is no, I don't. And I'm not sure the extent to which it's in the public domain. It's probably proprietary information. The interesting thing that did come up as a consequence of thinking about that is this debate between Tesla / Elon Musk and the purest point of view, which is only using visual recognition. What they argue is that this pure focus on using visual recognition means that they can be that much more efficient in the way that they actually collect and process data. They only have one set of sensors, or one type of sensor, I should say, one database stack, if you like, to have to manage, that is optimized for that particular modality of sensing. Whereas something like Waymo has got LiDAR, ultrasound, or ultrasonic sensing, interior cameras, radar as well. And so there is actually a lot more processing that needs to go on. The other thing that's quite interesting is the Waymo service is geographically ring fenced.
Oh,
So they
okay.
have apparently, using LiDAR, like mapped the environment in which it's working, like it's a controlled environment essentially,
Hmm.
because of its ring fencing. They're able to actually collect and sense and collect a lot of data specifically about the behaviors that there are within that geographic location that it operates in, which frankly is quite sensible.
It is. But it means that you couldn't grab one in LA to drive to San Fran, for example. It's just not set up
Correct.
for that at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Okay. I
I think
know.
the, uh,
No, no, go on.
yeah, I mean, one of the things around using pure visual recognition is you can't see through rain and clouds.
Mm,
There are several videos of Tesla's not being able to figure out what's in front of it, like correctly identifying traffic lights ahead of it, but the traffic lights are actually coming directly
mm,
towards the vehicle. And what it was a set of temporary traffic lights sitting on a trailer being towed by a maintenance truck. Uh, you know, the thing is that if you're using LiDAR, you actually can see that that thing is fixed in place.
hmm.
And it's a shape that's connected to a trailer as opposed to uh, picking up on traffic light images. So there are
Okay.
lots of sort of anecdotes around that.
Mm. I know talking to a former MP actually who lives in Hamilton, works in Hamilton, which is a grid city. So it's very much an old school square grid makeup of most of the town. He always had a vision of self-driving cars being perfect for that kind of location because it's flat, it's square, it's easy to navigate around. But his concern was always if you have a mix of self-driving cars and human-driven cars, humans are impossible to predict. Generally speaking, they can be a bit out there. Did you come across any issues like that while you were a passenger, and how did the vehicle react to it if you did?
Um, I mean, the short answer is not that I was aware of. So
Okay.
it was going on. So based on the research that I did around this, predicting behaviors of all manner of different things
Hmm.
is part of its training set. So, a pedestrian that is on the sidewalk and then moves behind a parked car only to appear on the other side of that vehicle in front of oncoming traffic is not the simplest thing to figure out. So, looking for different behaviors is one of the things that is pretty damned important in terms of a viable, autonomous vehicle. One of the things that did strike me as interesting is this idea of the four-way stop. Um, and so in the United States, they have a when you come to a stop sign and there are multiple stop signs at an intersection. So let's say it was four ways. So it's a intersection, a cross intersection. Your right of way is determined by who arrived at that intersection first. And if you get two vehicles that arrive at the same time, then you have to give way to your right.
Hmm.
Um, but as someone who's had to learn this as a foreigner, driving in the United States, it is filled with cultural nuances. A lot of people don't come to a complete stop.
Hmm.
So, if that was a hard and fast rule that your algorithm was looking for, it it could very easily get tripped up. You have, and the other thing I would note is that if you have a pedestrian in front of you, the right of way is not guaranteed. So, in other words,
Hmm.
you have to give priority to the pedestrians. So there's a whole series of behaviors that you actually have to figure out just navigating something that we kind of take for granted in terms of
Hmm.
being able to um, sort through a sort of heuristic of choices that you have to make when it comes to navigating a simple intersection. So, yeah, the whole behavioral side of things is a really interesting dimension to it. And there are actually specific models that and algorithms that they use to predict behavior versus other aspects of what it's trying to figure out in terms of route optimization. I guess one thing coming back to your first question in relation to getting into the car, what Waymo have figured out is that there's real hesitation amongst prospective customers that they are fearful of what the experience will be like. And that's not
Hmm.
helped by the likes of Cruise, for instance, that uh, you know do strange things. Or there was a story, I think it was in Arizona, of an Uber training vehicle that hit a cyclist, and the cyclist was killed. But there was a supervised, it was supervised learning that was going on. So there was actually a driver sitting in the seat, but they weren't paying attention to the self-driving mode.
Hmm.
That person actually ended up going to jail for manslaughter. Um, but it's the whole safety concerns are not helped by what I would describe in terms of Tesla's approach as being a little bit more maverick and purist in their point of view around self-driving. Um, Waymo put a lot of emphasis on that whole the safety dimensions, and it's everything from how well does the car figure out what's going on with people outside the vehicle, but also how it figures out what's going on for people inside the vehicle. To that earlier point, what happens when a passenger has a heart attack? How do you deal with that? How do you calm their anxiety? Well, playing soothing music, which I actually found a brilliant touch. It was like entering into a massage chamber. So and by the way, these are brand new Jaguars, so
Mm.
it's the most pristine interior that I've ever experienced as well.
Hmm.
Not
Does
not your
that
typical Uber.
I was going to say, does that sense of luxury that comes with a vehicle like a Jag feed into your expectations of what you're going to get on the ride?
Well, I think it's probably a very deliberate choice on their part. That again, perceived quality, perception is reality in some respects. So if you're getting into a quality vehicle and it has a high safety rating, these are all things that are going to make you will potentially quell your anxiety around putting your life in the hands of a machine.
Okay. Final question: would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was considering it. One thing I would say is it's not the cheapest experience.
Mm.
It was something like 30 New Zealand dollars, so like 20 US dollars to go on a like 2.5 mile journey.
Oh, okay.
But that's probably about right for catching a cab in Los Angeles. So I guess that's the trouble when you purchase things in pesos, as
Yeah.
we Kiwis often experience when we travel overseas.
Oh, yes.
So, to answer your question, absolutely, I would do it again. It was a fascinating experience, and I can't wait for them to be rolled out elsewhere in the world.
I'm still looking forward to seeing them in Hamilton in New Zealand because that's going to be a really interesting experience. with all the boy races and metal car heads and petrol heads and everything else that they have down there. I'm sure that self-driving cars will be the perfect addition to the
Well,
mess.
for those listeners and viewers that don't know that Hamilton is referred to as the Tron, it really will be the Tron coming to Hamilton.
Self-driving cars. A little bit of total recall in there because you need to have that when it comes to self-driving cars. You did a big write-up on this for the Data Pro newsletter, so people can access that. I think we'll have links in the bios for where people are watching or listening to this from.
Yeah.
But we're going to add something a little different to the end of this episode. We actually ran what you wrote through Notebook LLM to get them to come up with their impressions on it. They're very complimentary about what you wrote as well, which is fantastic to see when AI is complimentary about people writing about AI. So we'll tag that onto the end of this episode so people can track it down as well if they need to. There'll be chapter markers and stuff like that online. Sam, thank you very much for the insights today. Welcome back to the country. Hopefully it is a chance for you to unwind and catch up on that jet lag now.
Super. Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. Buckle up, because today we are going deep into the world of driverless cars.
Yeah.
Imagine yourself sitting in a car, no driver,
Yeah.
and you're just cruising through an LA four-way stop.
Wow.
It sounds like the future, right?
It does.
Well, it's closer than you might think, thanks to companies like Waymo.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack how they make it happen.
I love it.
We have this awesome article from datapro.news
Cool.
by Samuel Williams
Okay.
called Driverless Vehicle Data Engineering.
All right.
Really gets into the nitty-gritty.
Nice.
How do these autonomous vehicles handle these everyday situations like a four-way stop?
It is amazing how much goes into something we as humans do without even thinking.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And the article lays out Waymo's approach as sense, solve, and go.
I like it.
Sounds simple,
Uh-huh.
but I'm guessing there's more to it
Oh, tons more.
than
though.
meets the eye.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
sense, I'm guessing that's all about perception.
Right perception, giving the car a way to see and understand everything around it.
Okay, so like giving the car eyes.
Like giving it eyes,
Okay.
but not just eyes.
Okay.
It's loaded with sensors.
Okay.
So you have LiDAR, which is creating this really detailed 3D map of everything.
Uh-huh.
You've got cameras for capturing all the details, like the traffic signs and the colors.
Okay.
And you have radar for measuring speeds, even when the weather is bad.
So it's like giving the car superhuman senses.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's gathering all this data,
right.
but it can't just be about gathering the data.
No, you have to make sense of it.
It has to make sense of it.
That's right.
Okay.
That's where sensor fusion comes in.
Sensor fusion.
Yes. It's how the car takes all of the information from these different sensors and puts it together
Right.
into a single picture of what's happening around it.
So is that like how our brains work
It is.
with our eyes and ears and stuff?
Yeah, just like our brains.
Okay.
Taking in all those senses. Waymo's using some really advanced algorithms, like Kalman filters.
Kalman filters.
Yeah,
Oh.
and deep learning techniques to make sure this all works together
Yeah.
seamlessly.
So the car is sensing
Right.
its surroundings.
Yeah.
So how does it move from that to solve?
Yes.
Figuring out like who goes first at the four-way stop.
Well, this is where the AI really kicks in.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence, it uses these things called deep learning models.
Deep learning models.
Yeah, and these are like little computer brains that are trained to do specific tasks.
Hold on. So the car has multiple brains.
It does in a way.
Wow, this is already complicated.
It is, but it's very cool.
Okay, so multiple brains.
Yeah.
What do these brains do?
Yeah, so you have things like VectorNet, which is specifically designed to predict how the other vehicles are going to move.
VectorNet.
VectorNet.
Okay, what's that all about?
Yeah, so imagine like a social network, but for cars.
Social network for cars.
Exactly. And it uses this information to try to predict what the other cars are going to do next.
Hold on. So you're telling me these cars don't just follow the rules, they actually try to predict
That's right.
what other drivers are thinking.
They are trying to predict that.
That seems like a huge challenge.
It's a massive challenge.
Wow.
And to make things even more complicated,
Okay.
VectorNet isn't the only tool in the AI toolbox.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They're also using convolutional neural networks, or CNNs.
CNN.
Yes, these are like the car's visual cortex.
It's visual cortex.
helping it recognize objects.
So, like, giving the car eyesight.
It is like giving it eyesight, but on another level.
Another level.
Yeah, and then you have recurrent neural networks, or RNNs,
RNNs.
and transformers, and these models are like time travelers.
Okay.
They can analyze sequences of events to understand what's happened in the past to predict what might happen next.
So they're giving the car memory.
They're giving the car memory.
So the car's building this detailed picture
Yes.
of what's going on.
Exactly.
But how does it actually make a decision?
Right.
We've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, I think we have.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot more to uncover here.
Right.
It's one thing to understand what's happening around you,
Mm-hmm.
but it's another thing to make a decision based on that
Okay.
and act.
Yeah.
And that's where things get even more interesting, because it's not just about, hard calculations.
Uh-huh.
The card has to try to figure out what other drivers are going to do,
Whoa.
which is kind of like reading their minds.
So it's not just about following the rules.
Right. It's not just about following the rules.
It's actually trying to figure out the intentions
It is.
of other drivers.
Yeah, like what are they going to do next?
That seems like a huge challenge.
It is a huge challenge.
Oh, wow.
And that's why Waymo uses these things called probabilistic models.
Probabilistic model.
Yeah, so instead of just coming up with one answer, the car considers a bunch of different possibilities and assigns a probability to each one.
So, like, it's weighing the odds.
Yeah, it's like weighing the odds.
Okay.
Trying to figure out, what's the most likely thing that's going to happen here?
So it's not just reacting to what's happening right now.
It's trying to predict
It's trying to predict the future.
the future. Wow.
And there's this whole area of research called intention recognition.
Intention recognition.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is all about figuring out what other drivers are planning to do based on subtle cues.
Yep.
Like their speed, their position in the lane, even just little tiny steering adjustments.
So it's like giving the car a sixth sense
Yeah, it is like a sixth sense.
for what other drivers are going to do.
Exactly.
Wow, but hold on, it's a four-way stop.
Right.
You got multiple drivers
Yes, you do.
all trying to do this at the same time.
At the same time.
How does it even handle that?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because now Waymo's using something called multi-agent prediction.
Multi-agent prediction.
Yeah, it borrows ideas from game theory.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just about predicting what one other driver might do, it's about how all the drivers might react to each other.
Yeah, it's a big game of chess.
It is like a giant game of chess.
Where everyone's moving at the same time.
At the same time.
Wow, so you got this AI predicting what other drivers might do.
Right.
But how does the Waymo car actually decide what to do?
Yes.
Like, does it just blindly follow the rules of the road?
You would think it would be that easy.
Yeah.
But real-world driving is messy.
Yeah, it is.
People don't always follow the rules.
Right.
You have to be flexible. You have to be able to sort of anticipate when someone's going to break the rules.
So it's not just a rule-following robot?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And this is where something called reinforcement learning, or RL, comes in.
Reinforcement learning, RL.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like giving the car a virtual driving school.
Okay, a virtual driving school.
Yeah. So through millions of simulations and real-world drives, it learns to make the best choices in all kinds of situations.
Even situations that don't.
Even situations that aren't in the rule book.
Okay.
That's right.
So the car is actually learning from experience.
Yes. Just like a human driver.
Just like a human driver.
That's amazing.
And they actually call this simulator CarCraft.
Hold on, did you say CarCraft?
Yes,
Like World of Warcraft for cars?
Yes, exactly.
That's amazing.
I know, it's very cool.
So they're basically stress testing
They are.
their AI
Hmm.
in a virtual world before they let it out on the streets.
Yeah, they can test millions of scenarios
Oh.
without actually putting anyone at risk.
But how do they make sure
Right.
that what the AI learns in CarCraft
Mm-hmm.
actually translates
Yeah.
to the real world?
Good question.
Because driving a virtual car
Yeah.
can't be exactly the same as driving a real car.
It's not exactly the same.
Okay.
And that's where transfer learning comes in.
Transfer.
Yes.
So what's that?
So it's kind of like taking all of the things you learned in driver's ed
Okay.
and then applying them to your first solo drive.
Gotcha.
It takes some fine-tuning.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that what you learned in the simulation actually translates
To the real world?
to the real world.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're bridging the gap between the virtual
They are?
and the real world?
Yes,
That's pretty cool.
it is.
But this sounds like a never-ending process.
It is, in a way.
Are they constantly refining these models?
Constant.
Even after they're deployed?
Even after they're deployed.
Wow.
Yeah, they're collecting data from every single drive,
Yeah.
looking for patterns,
Yeah.
identifying areas for improvement.
So the car is always like prepping for its next driving exam.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
But they must also have some pretty strict
They do.
safety protocols in place, right?
Yes.
Because we're talking about driverless cars.
Yes, we are.
So that seems like a pretty big deal.
Huge deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, governance is so important.
Okay, governance.
Yeah. In addition to the technology.
Yes, because we're talking about machines making decisions that can have an impact on human lives.
So high stakes.
High stakes.
Okay.
Yeah, so Waymo's invested a lot in developing these really robust governance frameworks.
So it's not just about building this cool AI.
No, it's also about making sure it's used responsibly.
It's used responsibly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they have this system called the Waymo Case Credibility Assessment,
Okay.
and it's basically this really rigorous checklist
Okay.
for making sure that the technology is safe.
Okay, so like a checklist.
It's a checklist. It's like the kind of things that you would see in aviation or healthcare.
So they're building in safeguards
They are
from the beginning,
from the beginning.
anticipating problems,
Making problems.
making sure they're addressed.
Yes.
Okay.
They're constantly testing, gathering feedback, and refining their deployment strategies.
Wow.
It's a multi-layered approach.
Okay, so we talked about how the car senses
Right.
the environment,
Yeah.
how it uses AI to solve the problem of who goes first,
Uh-huh.
how it learns from experience
Right.
to make better decisions.
Yes.
But we haven't talked about the go part
The go part.
of sense, solve, go.
Right. How does it actually do it?
How does it actually execute the decision?
Exactly.
Because it's one thing to decide to go.
Yeah.
It's another to actually do it safely.
That's where things get really exciting.
Yeah.
Because once the car has made a decision, it has to figure out exactly what to do.
Okay.
How to accelerate, how to steer, how to brake to safely move through the intersection.
So it's like, okay, I've decided to go.
Yes.
Now, how do I actually do this?
Exactly. And it
Okay.
does this with some very sophisticated planning algorithms.
Planning algorithms.
Yes.
Okay.
So like a chess player,
Okay.
thinking many moves ahead,
Uh-huh.
anticipating the other vehicles, and planning the best path through the intersection.
Wow. So can you give us a little more detail on those?
I can.
Okay.
Yeah. One of them is called Monte Carlo Tree Search, or MCTS.
Monte Carlo Tree Search.
MCTS.
And CTS. Okay.
And it's like the car is simulating thousands of different scenarios.
In its mind.
Yeah, in its mind.
Okay.
Evaluating different actions and choosing the one that's most likely to have a good outcome.
Wow. So it's playing out all these possibilities
Yes.
in its head
Yes.
before making a move.
Before making a move, that's right.
That's incredible.
And then there's Model Predictive Control, or MPC.
EPC. Okay.
Yes. And this one helps the car plan this smooth and safe trajectory through the intersection.
So it's like the car is constantly recalibrating
It
based on what's happening around it.
is constantly recalibrating.
Wow.
It's this very dynamic system
Okay.
that allows it to move through the world safely.
So they're probably combining these algorithms.
Yes, probably combining these algorithms.
With the rule-based systems.
Yes,
The reinforcement learning.
to create a very comprehensive approach.
It's like a symphony of AI
It is like a symphony.
to make sure the car navigates the four-way stop safely.
Safely and efficiently.
From sensors and deep learning
Yes,
to simulations and planning algorithms.
it's amazing.
It really is a testament to human ingenuity.
It is. And as this technology continues to advance,
Yeah.
it raises all these really interesting questions
Hey, what?
about how we interact with machines and how we ensure that those interactions are safe, ethical, and efficient.
Yeah, it really is mind-blowing to think about all this tech and decision-making going on.
Right.
Behind the scenes,
Mhm.
every time a driverless car pulls up to a four-way stop.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something we see almost every day, but I never thought about how complex it is.
Right. It really is a testament to how advanced it's become.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is that it's always evolving,
Right.
learning, improving with every mile driven.
So it's not a static system. It's always getting smarter
That's right.
and safer,
Safer, exactly.
thanks to all the data it's gathering,
Right.
analyzing.
That's right. Every interaction at an intersection, every little cue from other drivers, every weird situation, it all gets fed back into the system.
So the system's constantly learning.
Constantly learning and improving.
That's incredible. But
Right.
like you were saying before,
Yeah.
it's not just about making the tech better.
No, it's not.
It's about making sure it's used ethically.
Responsibly, ethically, yes.
Responsibly.
Absolutely. We can't forget we're talking about machines
Right.
making decisions that impact people's lives.
So the stakes are high.
The stakes are very high. So yeah, alongside all this amazing tech,
Mm-hmm.
we need these strong ethical guidelines. And, we need to keep having conversations about
Right.
how this tech's going to impact society.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even though this tech is amazing,
Yeah.
it's still new.
It's still early days.
Yeah, we're still figuring out how it fits into our world,
Absolutely.
how to make sure the benefits
Right.
outweigh the risks.
Exactly. And as it keeps getting better,
Yeah.
it's going to make us really rethink our relationship with machines, what we expect from transportation, even, our own roles as drivers.
It's like we're on the edge of a huge change
Ooh, we are.
in how we get around.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that the four-way stop, this thing we see every day,
Yeah,
is like this key part of that change.
I agree. It's like this simple thing has become this testing ground.
Yeah, for some of the most advanced AI we've ever built.
And the things we're learning here,
Absolutely.
they're going to change so much more than just driving.
Oh, yeah, way beyond transportation.
Like what?
Like how we plan our cities,
Okay, yeah.
how we build roads,
Uh,
even the future of work,
oh.
and yeah, even how we interact with technology on a personal level.
So the four-way stop is like this window into the future.
It is. It really is.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So the next time we're all waiting at an intersection,
Yeah.
let's take a second to appreciate
Yeah.
just how complex,
Mhm.
how powerful and challenging
Mhm.
this tech really is.
I agree.
Well, thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive
My pleasure.
into the world of driverless cars and this whole four-way stop situation.
It was fun.
Yeah, we hope you learned something new and you're looking at this everyday thing
Right?
in a whole new way.
A whole new way.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in to the deep dive.
Yes.
We'll see you next time when we take another deep dive into another fascinating topic
Sounds good.
and uncover the hidden depths of the world around us.
Hey, I want to thank Sam again for joining me this week and teaching me all about autonomous vehicles. It was really fascinating. I kind of want to get in one and go for a bit of a drive. And don't forget, if you haven't already, to hit that like, share and subscribe button. Join us again next week. We're going to be discussing more issues around data management, from the quirky like we had today all the way through to the, well, far less quirky but much more organized. Until next time, live long and prosper, and may the force be with you.